Hey, welcome to the Star Wars Unlearned podcast. My name is Josiah Shuett, and I'm joined by Nathan Hawley. What we're doing is we're looking at Star Wars from the perspective of its creator. So we're turning off our fan brains and really just trying to uncover the story that Lucas is trying to tell. We're in the middle of our series on the Phantom Menace, where we explore the filmmaking, the history, the mythology, and everything else that Lucas and his team used to bring this first chapter of the Star Wars saga to life. So join us as we dive in and unlearn what we have learned about the Star Wars story.
And then we pan into the Gungans being rounded up.
Right, okay. Yeah, so we might have talked about this last time, but you correctly said that all the storylines kind of follow each other in terms of their arc, or in terms of the shape of them. Like heroes are doing well, then they fail. They each reach a low point, and then they start to crawl out of that hole, at the same time too. So right now, Jar Jar's getting surrounded by droids, right? Is this the moment where he and Tarpals are surrounded, and he's like, I give up. Everybody give up. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, don't give up. And Jar just immediately says, nope. I'm scared.
Yeah, give up.
So yeah, he gets surrounded by droids, and Anakin gets surrounded by droids, and everyone's kind of like surrounded and trapped, and just like Obi-Wan is too. Like everyone's kind of like backed into a corner at this point.
In the hole. Yep, and then the very next scene is Padme being ushered to New Gunray, surrounded by droids. I'm just watching the scene as it goes, and just the difference between Padme. Again, I mean, I know we brought this up several times, but it's just you can just see it in the way she's acting this, and I just think that's cool because everyone kind of criticizes the prequels for the acting. I mean, we know it's all very intentional. Like George wrote them this way, but you can see it on her face. She's just staring at New Gunray, and she's not necessarily frowning, but you can kind of see she's like looking through her soul, kind of thing. And what a cool comparison to her staring out the window when we first met her.
Right.
Just kind of hopeless.
Same room.
Like, oh wow, there you go. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. That's cool. Anyway, I just saw that and wanted to comment. But anyway, so hit me up with the thoughts, man, or the script or your notes.
Yeah, that's just it's such an obvious thing. Again, that's what I love doing these deep dives and looking at it with fresh eyes, is because her arc was there all the time. I just never cared as a kid because I'm like, lightsabers, they're cool, and which they are. But now, it's so fun to see. Yeah, like you mentioned, that's such a great parallel, just where she starts. I mean, it's not necessarily, we're not even talking about dialogue or the script, but we're talking about just visually, just how she's all in her royal gown. She looks like a queen in that first scene, but she's not acting. She isn't one. She's not doing the queen. She's not doing what a queen should. She let down her people. She's failed, and she's distraught. Now she's dressed. The Trade Federation doesn't even recognize that she's the queen. They think she's just they do think she's the queen, but then later on, she's a decoy, right? Because they see the queen dressed in the makeup and the whole regalia, like, oh, that's obviously the queen, right? But then she shows them like, no, this is what a queen does. I'm, run over to my chair, pull out a gun, and and say, okay, now we're gonna discuss a new treaty. It's just how she's acting like a queen, even though she's let go of that persona, that mask, right? That mask with the makeup and the gowns and everything. Now she's kind of united those two sides of her. The 14-year-old girl that she gets to be, it's sort of like a Hannah Montana thing. She gets to be the normal girl when she's Padme, but she also has all this responsibility as a queen. Now she's kind of uniting those two together, and so it's so cool to see. As you point out, I love that you brought that up because it's in the same location, and she's doesn't look like a queen here, but she's acting like a queen, and as opposed to before when she was not. She's doing the opposite. So
that's so cool. I'm right there with you, man. I had no idea. I completely missed her arc until you and I started talking about this, which is sad to me. It's like, oh, how did we miss this? But yeah, I guess you become so familiar with something, it's easy to overlook. But yeah, I'm glad we're learning it now.
And part of it is the characters that I related to was, Anakin. And then I looked up to Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, because I was like, oh, that's the boys. I must follow what the boys are doing. But my mom and my sister are always paying attention to Padme and Leia. And so now I'm trying to force myself to, like, okay, it's, because I'm a guy, I'm always focused on what the guys are doing. Oh, let's see what the girls are up to. I'm like, oh, there's a whole aspect, a whole half of Star Wars that I'm kind of missing here, because it's such just because I like the, explosions and the and the fights, and my sister's like, oh, romance, kissy, I was like, yeah, who cares? And now I'm like, actually, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something going on over here. So I'm very happy to discover that half of it now.
Wow, that's an interesting point. Maybe we should have your sister on, and like Kelly join us one time, and we can just talk about the ladies' perspective and see what they think about it. I'd be really curious to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's some. Yes, you and I definitely wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know what they would say. Because yeah, it is interesting because it's Star Wars can. I think it approaches all people in different ways, and is really George really wanted something be something that everyone could relate to. That's why he created these incredible characters like Padme and Leia. But it is it is very much kind of like a lot of times it's a boys thing. Like the boy is the one swinging the lightsabers around. But yeah, it'd be interesting to get the yeah the woman's perspective on it because I don't know what that would be because I don't have that perspective. So yeah,
Yeah, I would love to hear her perspective because Kelly, my wife, she didn't. I mean, her dad kind of watched it, you know what I mean? But she wasn't. I mean, she had seen him and she liked him, but she wasn't into it, you know. And whereas like Esther, your sister, she was into it, whether she liked it or not.
yeah, we dragged kicking and screaming into it. Yeah, yeah.
But she knows it. She appreciates it, and she's told me, I like it. So I'd be really curious to hear her perspective. Yeah.
And
So.
both our other cousins, Maddie and Brooke, are their sisters, and
Mhm.
they were deep into it too. They loved Star Wars. I remember they dressed up as Padme for
Oh yeah.
Halloween and stuff. So Maddie had all these Lego Star Wars. She had an AT-AT with Luke hanging from Hoth. Did you ever see that? She had that Lego. I always was very jealous of that. This is huge Lego set. I'm like, that's so cool. But, anyway,
that is cool. You're right. Maybe maybe we just need to do a big family podcast sometime with
yeah,
all the cousins and be like, all right,
yeah,
let's just tell me what you
exactly.
think. That'd be awesome. I would love that. Yeah. Anyway, that's an idea for another day. But
I don't have too much to say on that scene except that.
ooh,
I'll go for it.
sorry. Do you want to finish your thought first?
No, it wasn't going anywhere interesting.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I was going to ask, maybe we talked about this. I can't remember, but what is the purpose of this treaty? They ask her to sign this treaty. That's their goal the whole time. But we kind of see Palpatine wants to kill her. So what's the treaty? Do you know? Did George mention anything like that, or is it just speculation at this point?
Well, so in the movie, I think it's Gunray says like the Queen and I are going to sign a treaty that will make our occupation legal here. They're trying to make it look like she's giving the planet up to them instead of them actually attacking. They're invading, but since they cut off communications, no one knows that they're taking it by force. So the treaty is meant to look like, oh, this is of our own free will. We're giving the planet up to the Trade Federation so they can use it however they want to make more money. They're trying to use it. I did some research into their whole plan at one point, figuring out okay, what were they trying to do? Again, it's always kind of behind in the background in this film. It's not super important. It's just they just need to be a threat. We don't need to know every detail, but it was fun to look into the detail. And I can't remember exactly what it was. It's not off the top of my head, but the point is that while their communication was going dead and no one knew what was happening on Naboo, the point was to sign a treaty real quick so it looks like this has all happened, in a friendly way, a very legal way. When of course it didn't. And now the Trade Federation, I'm not sure what their plan is. Now Sidious has basically abandoned them at this point. He knows that he got what he wanted. He gets to be Chancellor now, so he doesn't really care what happens to the Trade Federation. So they're still kind of holding on to their plan where Sidious is kind of going like, yeah, I'm done with you guys. Basically, I just want the Jedi taken out. I want Queen Amidala killed, so they can't reveal anything that happened. All the shady stuff behind the scenes that could lead back to me, right? But
Yeah, I was curious.
anyway, at least I should say that's my read of it. That's from what I've gathered from reading behind the scenes and stuff. I think that's what's going on here.
Okay. I've always kind of wondered that, and then think about it again here that they're still pushing this treaty thing, and I'm just trying to think like, what is Palpatine's goal in them signing a treaty? You know what I mean? Like, how does that help him? We see how he manipulated it, the situation that played out, but what was his intentional or original goal? Do you know? I mean, somehow to become chancellor, right? But
yeah, well, so the point was that it wasn't really the treaty was there to make the Trade Federation happy. Like that was the Palpatine didn't necessarily care about the treaty. He just cares about becoming chancellor and getting power. And so basically, once the rest of the galaxy finds out that the Trade Federation is taking over Naboo, even if it's not Naboo, maybe it's the Trade Federation keeps going and does this to other planets. But the point is that this will start a chain reaction that will lead to the Senate finally realizing that, okay, the Trade Federation, they have their own private army. They're doing whatever they want right now. We can't do anything because we don't have an army. So we need to raise an army to deal with that. And so that's where that's why he started the clones, before episode. At this around this same time, he and Dooku have done the clones thing, or have started the clone army project. So that army was originally intended to be for the Republic, as the comedian said in episode 2. But instead of the separatist movement at this point, it's Naboo needs help. These other planets are being taken over. They need help. We need to have an army that can match the Trade Federation's army. And eventually, maybe Palpatine predicted that there would be a separatist movement as well, and so that would make it even more necessary. But originally, the ball got rolling because would have started rolling. The ball would have originally started rolling with the fact that they find out, oh, this shady stuff happened on Naboo, or maybe the Queen signed a treaty, and then he eventually wanted them to kill her, so she would have died, and so that would have made the senator from Naboo say, Palpatine going, hey, what's happening with my people? Can someone please help us? He would be talking to the Senate instead of Padme, saying, we need help. And they'd say, okay, we'll elect you chancellor since you're, again, the sympathy vote for him.
The sympathy vote, yeah.
So and that would make him chancellor, and then he would have his army as well, and then he could use that to turn the galaxy against the Jedi and do that whole thing.
Okay. Because I never really thought about that till now. Like, what was the purpose of this treaty? That makes sense. It's just a different angle. Yeah.
The treaty was kind of like a side issue. It wasn't necessarily that's the ultimate goal for the Trade Federation, because that treaty gets them Naboo, it gets them that power that they want. But Sidious's plan is so much bigger than that. But the treaty is just a small step in his. Again, the treaty doesn't really mean much to him. It means a lot to the Neimoidians, though.
Gotcha. Okay, but it does play a piece, because he's pretty adamant there. I want that treaty signed. He's pretty
because of that treaty. Because that treaty is gonna be like, so once people see that what happened on Naboo, it's like, this treaty is bogus. Like, there's no way this happened peacefully. This is a lot of shady stuff happening here. The Trade Federation needs to be stopped. Where the Trade Federation, he's telling them like, no, I'll make it legal. I will make it legal. Like, it'll be fine. Which is really stupid of them to think that it's going to be fine, because you're going to invade a place, sign a treaty, everyone's going to say it's okay. The Senate is going to be furious once they find out. But under the pretense of communication loss, like, oh, we can just do it without them knowing about it. But that's just the Trade Federation being blinded by greed and power, being power hungry, that they think it's going to work. But of course, it's not. As soon as they learn about this really suspicious treaty after this, there's an army there that invaded very quietly. We didn't hear about it. Oh, now the Trade Federation's taken over, and the Queen's dead now. It's like, no, this is not gonna. Sidious was setting them up for failure, but they're just too stupid to see it.
Gotcha. Thank you for answering that question. I've been wondering, and then it's interesting to me they still are pushing it here, but I guess Palpatine is not telling them anything at this point other than just wipe him out.
Yeah, he just wants to.
He's done.
Kill witnesses, kind of thing. And we can talk about this. I think if we do like a recap episode 1 after this, we can talk about their whole plan. Because again, I don't have it all in my head right now, but I had it all laid out at one point where I kind of pieced it together, and I think it did make sense, and I think it was an interesting way to look at it. So I think we should talk about that when we get to there.
Okay, that'd be great. Yes. Alrighty. Well, I will not let us get hung up on this one scene then.
No, you're good. That was me. I'm the one who went forever, rambled forever on that. But
no, I was asking the question. That's great.
Let's see.
We need it. So
the only thing with that scene I think I really wanted to touch on was her acting like a queen but not looking like one, and the Neimoidians saying, oh, that's clearly the queen. They're not aware of her character arc. They're not aware of how she's changed or what's going on here. So they just look for the facade of the queen, when the actual behavior of the queen is what takes them down right there in that room. They don't even recognize the queen around them, because as we talked about before, like, they're dressed in very opulent robes. They're they assume that they stole from another planet they took over. They don't. They're slimy, gross, like alien snakes, right? And they're surrounded by these like army of dead battle droids, skeletons, robot skeletons. And so they're lazy, and they have these chairs that move for them. They can't even bother to walk, so they're just all about elevating themselves and like power and luxury. And so they dress themselves like a queen, like dress themselves like royalty. And so they that's what they see, is like that facade. That's what's important to them. That's what power is to them. And then Padme takes them down. There's just what they think is a decoy is the actual queen.
So what do you think about this? I just think it's ironic that she had guns in her throne chair the whole time. Is that
that is actually a very good point.
Because like, this seems odd for her character from what we know from Naboo's kind of stance. Is it just a precaution? Like, what's the
funny. Yeah.
Has George talked about that, or
not that I know? That's interesting. I never thought about that. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's kind of ironic. Like the pacifist queen has guns in her chair that she never uses. Won't use, even when they get invaded. I don't know. That's interesting. I never thought about that till it's just a moment that the pacifist queen has guns in her in her armrest.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Like, I wonder if she was trained. Like if that was part of what it means to be a queen, is you are trained. But I got the sense that It was like, no, you're not. We're peaceful. We're artsy. We don't do this war thing. We have our security guard, but that's it. I don't know. I'm curious on if George said anything on that.
Yeah, like, well, she for sure has combat training. Like the handmaidens are all fighting along with her. They're all trained, so there is combat
There you
training in
go.
Naboo for sure. Like Panaka,
Okay.
he's clearly got some security forces need to have that. But I think it's more, I guess, just war, like a full scale war, and the threat of battle, but like protecting yourself. I don't think they would be opposed to that. But I think they wanted to avoid a war more than that. So it's not like they won't fight ever. Maybe they won't. They'll defend themselves if they need to, but they're not going to do anything that will lead to a war. You know, that's too aggressive or something. I don't know, but that's a good point. I don't know. I'd have to now have to like follow the arc or follow the story of the Naboo's pacifism versus their activism versus their fighting. Figure out how that plays out, because that's true. I mean, that's not. There's a reason. Obviously they someone asked George, where are these guns? Where's she going to pull these guns out of? Like, oh, we'll put them in the chair. Like they
Right.
at least some thought was put into it. Maybe he didn't, wasn't trying to paint this huge metaphoric picture here, but they're there for a reason, maybe not a hugely profound one, but I don't know. I'd have to look into that more. But that's a good point. Good call. You're so good at catching these little things that, like, I never would have thought of in a million years. I'm like, oh no, like that's completely dismantled my view of the scene. What's gonna happen now? Now I'm like questioning everything, but in a good way. It's fun
That's what
because
we
now I'm
do,
like, oh, I
right?
get to go back and watch it again and see what else I find. But so thank you for having such an eagle eye for those little things that
Oh man, you
totally
bet.
go past me.
I like the details. So, and that's
Well,
what we're trying
I
to do,
like to
right?
think I do too, but that's a huge one that I totally missed.
Oh, that's okay. I honestly never thought about it until just this moment. So, in fact, most of that is happening just in this moment.
Hey, there you go.
But I just think it's cool. I love all that stuff, and as I learn, and we're trying to figure out what, the goal of this podcast is, like, what did George intend versus like what did Nathan intend? So it's kind of fun to think through this stuff, and yeah, I know this whole thing has been like that, and it's fantastic. So I was curious, and if you heard anything, because like I said last time, I didn't do a ton of research, but I couldn't find a lot from George on the last like battle act here. So I was just curious on if you know anything, but
No, I think it's mostly just because the last act is very action driven. There's not a lot
yeah,
of
just visual.
huge story, mythological ideas happening. There are some, specifically with the Jedi's battle with Maul, but and Anakin. But for the most part, yeah, it's all kind of just very what you see is what you get, I would say. So, but anyway, but yeah, I don't really know anything else on that scene, I guess.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. Just as I'm looking at it, it's quite a shocking image. Like just one of the last frames there. George has the Nemoidians in the middle, and like Padme, who comes up to like their chest. Like they're huge. They're huge guys. They're taller than anyone else in the entire room. And I just think it's interesting. They don't put up any resistance. Their faces are in terror, watching their droids get shot down. And it just goes to show, like, these guys are all bark, no bite, just like you were saying. Like, they're massive creatures, and they're intimidating, and they're ugly. You know what I mean? Like, you think these guys would put up a decent fight, but they're just cowards. So it's just kind of what a contrast, to see, like,
yeah, this 14-year-old girl staring them down, and
yeah. I never thought about that. Just looking at it, I'm like, wow. And they're terrified. So anyway, had to point that out.
Because before, they were, they're all acting tough when they had all their droids, taking them away. But now when their droids are taken away from them, they're powerless and they're all, easily intimidated.
All right, man. We get to the lightsaber scene here.
Let's do it.
It's interesting because we have a little bit of a hope, like with Padme capturing the Vice right now, but we kind of go right back down. So everything else is kind of
yeah. Her arc is kind of the first one that kind of has an upswing, and then this one, yeah, the Jedi actually kind of goes has two upsets. It has like Qui-Gon's death and then Obi-Wan's near death, where he's like dangling from the edge of the pit there. So, and then then Jar Jar, or then Anakin, then he succeeds, which allows the Gungans to succeed. So yeah, there's some variation there, but I think that George has talked about, he shot all these scenes. He wasn't quite exactly sure the order they're going to fall in. And so it was a lot of just kind of trial and error in the editing room and figuring out, okay, well, because this scene with Obi-Wan could have very easily have happened, before Amidala, retook the throne room from the Trade Federation. but he put it here just because he wants to end. He decided like, I want it to end with the most dramatic one, the most surprising one, which is the death of Darth Maul. So that's he wanted to save the one for the end. So that one was kind of the edit was shuffled in order to facilitate that. And so I'm not exactly sure where he originally envisioned the scene. Maybe it was exactly in this spot, but it could have been somewhere else.
Yeah, I have to correct myself from last week because I thought Anakin was the big pivot point, and he kind of is still in the battle. But I mean, really, that was Padme. I mean, she kind of has the first victory, if you will. I thought it was Anakin. I thought this came after him now. I'm watching him like, oh my, I was wrong. Padme really is the one that brings the upswing. But it's such an interesting dynamic. I've never thought about that before, how like everyone else is losing. Padme gets a quick victory, and then everyone, Darth Maul wins over Obi-Wan, at least for the time being. It just seems kind of like a weird spot. I don't know. I'm just wondering if you know, I guess you say you didn't know much about it, but is it meant to sort of show her arc first? Like she sort of gets the victory first, but then Anakin is like the real pivot point. I don't know. I'm curious on what the editing choices were with that.
Yeah. Well, part of it is there's an impossible task with editing where you want to create simultaneity, especially when you're cross-cutting between so many different storylines. You don't want it to feel like this moment is suspended in time and we hit pause in this moment on this action and all this other stuff happens. Then we go back to it. Like you all want it to kind of feel like it's happening simultaneously. So it's very tricky. Like there's an example of this not working well, in my opinion, in Transformers 3, Dark Side of the Moon, where Optimus Prime, it's like the big battle. I think it's Chicago at the end of the movie. There's, big battle on Optimus Prime. He's flying through. He gets caught like in these like wires. They're stretched between a building. He's like caught in these wires, and then like a full like 15 minutes something goes by, and then it comes back, and he's still caught in the wire. And then he gets out, And so it's something like that where like there's all these other storylines they're trying to balance in that film, and I that struck me as odd as an audience member, going like, he's still like, maybe it wasn't 15 minutes, but it felt like an eternity, and he's we cut back to him, and he's still there. I'm like, but that was like forever ago. So part of that is like you want to keep that pace going, and so you don't want Obi-Wan hanging in that pit forever, because you think about when the scene ends is Obi-Wan falling down in the pit, right? You could have gone directly from Qui-Gon's death to the gates opening and then Obi-Wan falling, so it'd be two failures in one chunk, right? And so it could be a time issue, like I just said, like each scene should be moving quickly, but it also is, he wants to end with the Darth Maul thing, so you want to save that for like the finale, so we want to get everything else tied up before that, so you actually create a gap between Obi-Wan falling and him jumping back up and killing Darth Maul, which you fill in with the rest of it. Yeah, I want to save the best for last, most shocking for last. Maybe I want more drama there, so I'll stretch that. I'll have while everyone else is getting better, we'll have that one storyline go in a darker place where both Jedi are down. One's dead, one's about to die, seemingly, which creates more tension, I guess. These are just the things he could be thinking about with editing. But I haven't heard an exact, the definitive answer, but those are just my thoughts on maybe why that. I don't know if that made a lot of sense, but why but those editing choices were made.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that now. I'm watching it and thinking about it. It's just who really brings the turn of the tide, and it's kind of Padme, really, but the emphasis really seems to be on Anakin. Maybe just because what he does affects the droid army, whereas like Padme's not quite. Like the droids can't shut down until the droid shift's done. But I don't know. Or yeah, maybe it's just a timing thing. I could see where there'd be a challenge. Like, how do you put all these story pieces together and not make it drag on, or make it weird? Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Well, there's a famous line of Lucas when in the behind the scenes documentary, the beginning, the making of episode 1, where he talks. They're reviewing this final act of all these different storylines, and he's in the screening room watching it with his editors, with his crew, and he kind of goes, "I may have gone too far in a couple places." Like he's like, "This is a lot to deal with." Like it was very, very. They were very, very worried about this last act because it's very complicated, and there's a lot. Like you said, as you've been talking about, there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of cutting back and forth, and making sure the audience doesn't get lost, making sure the audience is on board, they're excited, like that you just don't lose the audience in any way. That they're exactly where you want them throughout every single scene, and with all that cutting, it's very, very hard to do. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stressing out on George's part for this last act here.
Yeah, we did a good job. I feel like I never once thought about like, where are we? What's going on? I mean, he's very clear cut.
Yeah, I feel like it worked well.
Yeah, even as a kid, Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'll say, you said, as you rightly pointed out, that Padme is the first one to kind of where the tide turns. It's her capture of the Viceroy. That's what she says in that meeting where they have in the forest before the battle, where she says, well, "That's why we must not fail to capture the Viceroy. Everything depends on it." So that is what they're building towards. And so when that happens, that is when the tide turns. Is you're right, when she captures the Viceroy, which she could have forced them to shut down the droids, but Anakin, his victory is blowing up the control ship, which takes down the droid army. Who knows if how that would have gone down otherwise? Like I said, if the Trade Federation were like, at gunpoint told, commands them to shut them down or something. But yeah, Anakin has a more spectacular, victory. But the important thing is that the Viceroy was captured. And because they're cowards, because they're, as you said, all bark and no bite. Once their lives are threatened, they're going to do whatever they can to stay alive and to not be. They don't mind losing. They don't mind shutting down a droid army. And they do give up, like they do surrender. So.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, it is interesting to think, like, what did that conversation look like with Padme and the Viceroy, and what would have happened if they couldn't have shut down the droids? Like, would the Viceroy have tried to stall long enough until they came? It would have been interesting. I don't know. Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah, well, actually, the scene of them kind of having a conversation, it was originally in that throne room, and then Lucas in reshoots moved it to that courtyard where the outside scene where the Trade Federation are sent off and Palpatine comes and visits. Like so he kind of reshaped it a bit. But that dialogue, that kind of conversation between the Queen and the Trade Federation was going to happen in this moment, in this scene, in this room. But it didn't make sense all of a sudden stop for a quick dialogue scene while Anakin's blowing up starships and Darth Maul's, getting cut in half. Like that, yeah, those don't cut well together. You want to keep the exciting stuff happening, and that felt more like an aftermath thing. So he moved it to a different location, to a different part of the film, in a different setting, to kind of, since it was kind of a denouement. Things were kind of winding down.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, speaking of Darth Maul, we get right back to him. What a great fight scene. I love the just the energy of it. I mean, George has said several times, and I think Nick Gallard, the stunt coordinator, said the same thing. Like, these two actors are just fantastic athletes, and you can see it in this scene. Just the passion, how they're both just going at it, and it's so choreographed really well, and just so much energy. Man, it's great. And I just love the scene that starts out with Obi-Wan he's hyping himself up. I love that. He's got that ready, like that almost like video game stance, where he's just bouncing a little bit, like, here we go. Okay, here we go. Yeah, and seeing it before it happens, they both know it's coming. Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, and a fun thing about Obi-Wan, kind of, bouncing there, breathing, like get himself type up. That's actually Ewan McGregor doing that. The cameras were rolling, but they hadn't said action yet, and so that was just him getting ready for it. That was just Ewan McGregor getting ready. That wasn't in the script. That wasn't directing. That was him acting. So they liked that, so they put it in the movie. So that's maybe the only time you'll see Ewan McGregor on the screen not acting. That's just him just being himself, getting ready for the scene. Yeah. So it's actually cool. Him. He's genuinely hyping himself up, getting pumped, ready for the action.
Wow, that's really cool. No, I never knew that. It makes sense. I mean, if I was a Padawan and I just saw my master killed and I got to fight that guy, oh man, yeah, I'd be trying to pump myself up too, I think.
Well, and also kind of reads is like, he's angry. He's got a lot of energy. He's like, he's ready to go. But of course, you're coming at him with anger and, hate at that point. He's gonna, that's his realm, and he's gonna dominate you there. And so that's, of course, Obi-Wan fails at that moment, and Maul gets the upper hand. Darth Maul is able to simultaneously parry Obi-Wan's moves and then take a moment to force push him. Why don't the Jedi just use the Force all the time? Why do they spend all the time with the lightsaber fights? Why don't they just push the bad guy away? It's like, well, they are using the Force. Lightsaber fights would be 2 seconds long. Like, if you see any kind of duel, or like samurai duels, that they're very like 2 moves long, because it's all about who can predict. The Force is about seeing things before they happen, right? Predicting the future. And so the better you can see in the future, the better you can predict their moves, the better chance you have of gaining an advantage. I think it's just kind of impressive that Darth Maul was able to, do that, and then divert some, however much percentage of his Force power to pushing Obi-Wan over the edge.
Yeah. Do you know, did George say that Obi-Wan kind of taps into the dark side a little bit here? I mean, he's clearly operating out of emotion. I mean, you can see it on his face. He's furious. He's moving, playing dirty, moving fast, beating Darth Maul, Matt, like beat for beat. Did George comment on that?
I think he did with the cinematography. I think he did with the movie. I don't think he's ever said it, but Obi-Wan's clearly in a different. I mean, I think it's like you said. It's so obvious that he's different here than he is in the first part of the movie. Like, he and Qui-Gon are they're serious, but they're not emotional. Like, Darth Maul's one making angry faces at him the entire time, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are kind of just in the zone. But here, Obi-Wan's just, he's, when they're locked sabers right before Darth Maul pushes him, Obi-Wan's got his teeth gritted. He's the one who's making the angry face, right? Um, and so I think even though Lucas hasn't said anything, I don't think he really needs to because I think it's pretty plain to see in this scene. And of course, it's no accident that when he's in that phase, that's when the Jedi falls, when he's been getting too emotional and too intense, and that's the same thing happens to Anakin, right, in Revenge of the Sith, and it's the moment where and when Obi-Wan calms down and lives in the moment, and then he takes his master's. I'm skipping ahead, but sorry, but we'll get to that
No,
one
it's
later.
so good.
But yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I don't think I haven't heard Lucas say anything specifically about Obi-Wan tapping into the dark side here. I don't know if I would go as far as like it's not like Anakin giving the dark side with a trade with the Tusken Raiders or anything, but he's not behaving as a Jedi should, and he pays the price for it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never had thought about that before. So it's very interesting to me to see it and watch it in that lens. So I was curious, and I feel like maybe George did a little bit of a commentary on this in the Clone Wars. Like when he's fighting Darth Maul for the first time again in Clone Wars, and Darth Maul just kind of goes him, where he says, "How did that make you feel when I gutted your master?" And Obi-Wan does the same thing. He starts losing control and gets mad, and Darth Maul shoves him right back again and says, "Your rage has unbalanced you." So
There you go.
I don't know. Yeah.
Perfect. Didn't even think about that, but yes, that's a totally yeah. I guess what's happening here. Yeah.
So maybe that's Darth Maul playing with him again. Like maybe that's George's commentary on this. Like shedding the light on that a little bit. Like that is what happened here. I never thought about that. I never thought about Obi-Wan. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if George is stepping into the dark side, but at least I'm becoming unbalanced. Like they use that word, but
yeah. So much so that Darth Maul gets the better of him. Like Obi-Wan doesn't even. He's so like in angry, and so like in that moment that Darth Maul gets force pushes him off a ledge. It's like he should have seen that coming if he'd been paying attention. If he had been in a better headspace, if he had been doing what he should have been doing, he would have probably avoided that.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Wow.
And he learns his lesson. Dangling there in the pit, he's like, "Okay, I've learned my lesson. I need to calm down. I need to focus. I need to be Qui-Gon. I need to become my master."
Boy, that's really cool. Wow. Okay, this is great. It's my mind blowing moment right here, man. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So I'm watching this, like, man, I always thought that, like, obviously he was upset, right? That he lost his master. I guess I don't know what I ever really thought before. Now I'm kind of like questioning everything, but okay, wow. I think you just blew a fuse in my head. So I'm just kind of like, holy cow. I need to process this before I comment.
You're fine.
It's so good.
And I want to say, like, it's not while you're I don't know, putting a new fuse in
recompose
to replace the one that blew out. But he should feel upset that his master died. It's not that he should be emotionless, but it's like letting that control you. A Jedi, like saying a Jedi shall not know fear. It's not like that's not necessarily the way to say it. It's you don't get controlled by it. He's angry, but just don't let that. He never stops being angry. He's never not angry at Darth Maul, because he took his master from him. It's like his best friend, his father figure. But he's not going to, just to survive. He shouldn't let it control him just that he can survive this moment, right? He knows that it's not just because it's the wrong thing to do. It's also like the only way he's going to survive this moment. He's going to get out of this alive is if he doesn't give himself over to that anger. So just to clarify, because I know a lot of people, it's like, oh, Jedi shouldn't be angry. Like, no, it's a little more. People get that. We talked about that several episodes ago, but I want to clarify that. Yeah.
That's interesting because Yoda gives the advice to Anakin, right? Train yourself to let go in Revenge of the Sith. Miss them, do not. Mourn them, do not. It's interesting that he says that, with the mourning, do not mourn them. And I'm just curious on...
Yeah, rejoice for them. Yeah.
Right. I guess I'm just kind of wondering how that fits into kind of what you're saying here. Where it's like, are they allowed to feel anything or no? That kind of thing. Like, is Yoda... Like, would Yoda say, don't... I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here, but...
Yeah, Yoda's whole point. Yeah, and it is tricky, and that's why it is hard. I mean, and it's a tricky thing that Lucas is trying to tell us through these movies, and it's no wonder people get it wrong. I had it wrong. I still don't know if I have it 100% right, but it's really been hard for me to kind of rewire my brain to think this way about Star Wars. But yeah, because at first I thought, I was bought into that narrative of, the Jedi are, doing it all wrong. Like Yoda, Mace Windu, they represent that's the failure of the Jedi. They've become too dispassionate. They become too analytical, too logical, and so Yoda's giving Anakin bad advice in that scene. And I don't think that's the point. Is Yoda is right in that scene. He's giving Anakin good
Mm-hmm.
advice, for at least from
Mm-hmm.
Lucas's perspective. Um, so it's not, but and Yoda so doesn't say like, you don't love people, don't care about them. I think it's when he says like, don't miss them, and rejoice for them when they transform the Force when they die. It's that idea of leading it to attachment where you get to the point where Anakin is, where like, I love this person so much that, love them so much, quote in quotes, that I won't let them die, I won't let them leave, because I need them. It becomes a selfish thing. So yes, Obi-Wan's gonna miss his master, I guess. He's sad to see him die, obviously, and that, and then the very end scene where they're with their last scene together, he's in tears, he's really upset by it, but um he moves on. And part of that is, I think, in him taking on his master's mission, is part of that, where he doesn't try to find a way to bring Qui-Gon back or something, or he doesn't obsess over it. It's tricky. We do need to have a conversation about it. I have bits and pieces of it. Lucas isn't stupid. He's thought things through, so I have confidence that it makes sense somehow. I just don't have it all in my head yet, but I do know that I'm confident saying that the Jedi are allowed to feel things. They just can't be controlled by those emotions. They can't
Yeah, ruled by him.
overcome that, be ruled. And I think that's what Lucas kind of means. Like, when you miss someone, when you mourn them, it's like you're being controlled by your grief at that point. Like, it's okay to miss things a little bit, but I think when he says miss, when he says mourn, I think he means like it's too much of that thing. Even though he doesn't quite say that explicitly. That's just my hunch, though. So in this case, I'm not entirely sure what Obi-Wan's reaction with Qui-Gon should be or is. I haven't really thought about it too much, unfortunately. I should have, but before we talked about this, but I don't know. I was sorry. I'm rambling again with no direction. My bad.
Sorry I keep bringing it up, but I just feel like it really is a big piece of how we interpret these movies, and what George wants us to get is like what is out of balance here, and what's not. And because I'm just, my impression is that I always thought that the Jedi and the prequels were doing the right thing, but just taking it a little too far. You know what I mean? We're in the sense of like, well, like with Yoda there, where like rejoice for them. That's a good thing. Don't be attached. But I feel like maybe I've always thought, I'll have to rethink it now that we're talking about this, but I've always thought that he took it too far in saying, don't mourn them, don't miss them, like don't feel anything for them. So I'm curious on how that'll work. And we can save that for the later part here, or that podcast, because yeah, I'm not sure either of us know right now what George really thought. Especially interesting looking at this here with Obi-Wan, who's clearly mourning his master, and I don't know, sometimes maybe George didn't know at this point, and he moved it and changed it a little bit as we got to Revenge of the Sith, or I don't know, maybe he hadn't thought about that. And I would like to nail that down sometime, because I feel like that's a big piece of the Skywalker story, is how we get from Yoda saying, don't mourn them, don't miss them, and Obi-Wan in the original trilogy saying, you got to kill Darth Vader, to Luke throwing down his lightsaber in love for his father. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a huge deal. But anyway, that's a whole thing we can talk about later, as I'm looking forward to that. But
yes, that is, I fully intend on having a conversation about that. Yeah, balance, like not just balance in the Force on a cosmic scale, but balance within yourself, with as a as Anakin or Luke or whatever the character is. Yeah, that's very it's tricky, but it's important. Yeah, and I do want to, and as I've learned more about it, it is changing. It's like changes a lot, and it's cool, but I need to learn more, because I still don't have it in my head yet. So
me neither.
I think we kind of started this podcast like, I'll just like, hopefully it doesn't come up, because neither of us know what to do with that, but it's coming up several times, so clearly it's important. So we'll have to get into it more.
Yeah, it's so big. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is we want to see what George says. We don't want to just be like, here's what I think. It's like, well, what did he want for us to know? What are we supposed to learn from this? So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So sorry to bring it up again, but
no, you're good.
So big. That's a big part of this, but okay. So here, Obi-Wan is unbalanced. We'll just say, man, I've always loved that scene where he's
physically too. He literally trips and falls, or like he falls.
Oh yeah, there you go. I never even thought about that. Yeah. I just love that scene where he's just like, he's got the upper hand. He's pushing down on Darth Maul, just gritting his teeth at him, and playing dirty. And then Darth Maul just catches him off guard there. Such a good, wow, yeah, good parallel to emotions, like Obi-Wan's emotions that he's feeling there. So, Okay, I have some big questions here, but I do think it's interesting that we see Obi-Wan taking the offensive here, because that's not what the Jedi are supposed to do, right? They're supposed to defend themselves. Um, Whereas he's clearly not just defending himself here, um, which I think is an interesting parallel to Anakin's journey. And I've always thought that this scene is just a cool reflection on who Obi-Wan is. You know, like when Obi-Wan is um, faced with such a threat, both of the dark side and just Darth Maul, and just what a Jedi he is. You know, like both in skill but also in character. I just think that's a really neat testimony to who he is. Like he's here flirting with the dark side, essentially, and he overcomes it. And we see that arc several times in the Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan's faced with temptation, but he wins. You know, he overcomes it, whereas Anakin doesn't. And I just think it's a cool reflection on who he is and the kind of Jedi he is, and how he's going to be a much wiser man than Qui-Gon. You know, we see that. We see a glimpse of that even here, how he overcomes Darth Maul and Qui-Gon couldn't. And I just think that's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting can of worms you've opened in my head, where with the with the Jedi being on the offensive as opposed to the defensive. Because I can't remember who said it, but someone pointed out that the Jedi in the prequels, the Jedi are the first person to turn on their lightsabers, and in the original trilogy, it's always the Sith that turns on the lightsaber first. Which I don't know if that's true, because I think Luke turns on his and then Return of the Jedi. The idea being that Jedi should be defending, not attacking, and so when Luke turns on his lightsaber to kill the Emperor, Return of the Jedi, that's him starting to fall to the dark side, and Vader stops him. But I don't know. I haven't heard Lucas saying that was a fan theory, and I'm like, and part of me, I'm very like, I don't know if that's true here, because he said Obi-Wan's on the offensive here. I'm like, well, yeah, but the Jedi, since in the beginning of this fight, they bring out their lightsabers first, and then Darth Maul does his double-bladed lightsaber. So you could say they've initiated the fight, but I think it's if Obi-Wan fails here, Darth Maul is going to go kill everybody. He's going to go kill the Queen. He's going to. Yeah. So he is defending still, I would say.
Sure, absolutely.
Even though he's going, attacking. But it's interesting, and I wasn't necessarily implying that you think this or you were implying that, but it's more just that made me think of that observation that people have about the Jedi, and what it means to attack and defend. Like I don't think Jedi should never attack. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be the first one to swing. They should always just wait for the Sith to hit them. I think it's more about Obi-Wan is attacking Darth Maul here in order to defend the Queen, right? So it's a weird. We can take these things very literally sometimes as fans, and I want to think I think that's just a side issue. I'm like, I want to figure out and research that idea more of like a Jedi should not attack or should only defend. Like, what does it actually look like practically? Because does it mean like? I don't think this is what it means. Like I said, I don't think it means just holding your lightsaber just in ready position until the Sith attack moves their lightsaber first. I think it's bigger than that. But I just wanted to bring that up because I've often heard that as a brought up, like, oh, the Jedi always have their lightsabers out first in the prequels. I'm like, I don't know if that means exactly what people think it is. But again, that's this whole episode, I guess, is just me saying, I don't know, but still rambling for 5 minutes anyway about it.
Yeah, gotcha.
But it just means there's plenty more podcasts to be had where we finally figure this stuff out. Right. So if you can stick it through our uneducated, uninformed ramblings with these early podcasts, maybe by the time we get further through this, we will actually have something solid to say because we'll actually have done enough research. But oh well.
I hear you. Well, I'm curious on that because I mean, and what I mean on the offensive here is just in this fight, just this moment here, where he's slicing his lightsaber, he's kicking him, like you said, kind of playing dirty. And you can see it on Darth Maul's face a little bit. He's like, whoa, like what's going on here? But it's an interesting theme that is played out through the Clone Wars, where I mean, Anakin says over and over again, like the Jedi don't have what it takes to get things done. They're not willing to do what is required to win this war. You know what I mean? And we see several times in several fights where the Jedi will just kind of stop and wait. It's not like every move or anything like you said, but with Anakin, we don't see that a whole lot. Like he's always usually pushing forward and getting stuff done, and sometimes even killing people for it. And, that's when Obi-Wan goes, Anakin. Usually, what did you just do? And it's a real struggle for Anakin. Is like we are never going to win this war if we're just going to hold to our beliefs, and that's a big one in that Tarkin arc with the prison with Even Peel. But we can talk about that when we get to it. But that just came to mind and thinking about this and the rocking a hard place that the Jedi seem backed into, and that Palpatine seems to exploit, but and then pushes some over the edge and some not. So anyway, another big theme of big overall Star Wars thing. I don't know, we didn't bring up here, but it is in my mind a lot still. Just thinking about that with
Yeah,
Obi-Wan.
I got more things that just man, I just don't know enough. I don't know
Yeah,
enough. I need to learn more. Yeah,
yeah, me
true.
too.
Good point.
Yeah, because I don't know. That's all just my interpretation. So, um, which means nothing. We're here to talk about what
No, no,
droids.
yeah, cool. Yeah, what I said. Then maybe we should
What
move on to
droids
the
is.
next scene. Then I guess yes, because we're getting stuck in this like who knows with this
Yeah,
scene.
big themes here.
Yeah, but yeah, Obi-Wan gets pushed over.
Yep. Darth Maul kicks the lightsaber off, and then yep, Anakin's ship comes back up, and one of the first times we see shields on a ship.
Yes, yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
that was cool. I remember I didn't really clock that as a kid, but now looking back at that, like, oh, it's cool. Like they kind of you can see them power up, but they're still invisible. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a nice touch. I like that. You can see him power up, and then they go back to invisible. Yeah.
I don't think we ever see that again, do we? Like the ships see Shield powering up in any episode of Clone Wars or a movie? Not that I can think of. But
Boy, I don't know. We'll see shield stuff in Clone Wars on the big capital ships, but never like the fighters.
yeah,
So
that's true.
that I know of. So as soon as we go through the Clone Wars 10 years from now, we'll look back and be like, oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Or all those fans out there, they're like, what are you doing? I know exactly what they're when they do
Yeah, I
this.
know. Yeah, someone's saying right now. Actually, yeah, someone who has that encyclopedic knowledge of it will
Yeah.
be able to tell us. But anyway, yeah, with this scene, yeah, I don't think there's much happening other than just 9-year-old kid takes down this huge control ship, and again, the Trade Federations in their hubris and their greed, their fear of having the droids being autonomous, they put them all that control in that one spot. So if that one Achilles heel gets taken out, then they got nothing. And so, yeah, a large part of this is the bad guys kind of architects of their own doom in some ways with this.
Which is interesting because Palpatine will make the same exact mistake with the Death Star.
Good call. Ooh. Wow,
like,
dude.
why?
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
That's my blown. That's my blown fuse, dude. That's so smart. Wow.
Yeah, man.
Another one. Chalk up another point for Nathan. Wow, that was.
That's right.
That's so smart.
We just
yeah.
play mind blown tennis. That's all we do on this podcast.
That's awesome. I never thought about that.
Wow. Oh, yeah, man, because this is the lucky shot, right? I mean, Luke, it was a little bit more.
I'm such an idiot. Yes, of course it
but,
is.
But instead of the missile going into the main reactor, Anakin goes in the main reactor and blows it up. His is completely by luck. I mean, obviously, we know the Force is at work, but Luke at least uses the Force. Anakin just says, "What's this do?"
Yeah.
Boom, we got
the Force uses Anakin here, and Luke uses the Force. And
there you go.
That's yeah. Well, it's so funny because I thought about the parallels a lot, but I never thought about the parallel of the fatal flaw within the system of the bad guys, like impenetrable. In this case, it was an army they thought had no weakness, and almost said Force Awakens. In New Hope, it's the battle station that has no weakness, kind of thing. That's that's super cool. Wow, awesome. Well, thank you for bringing that up. That's a great observation and an obvious one that I should have gotten.
No worries, man. I've had those. I do find it interesting though that Palpatine didn't learn from that. You know what I mean? Like, you think he would have caught that? Well, maybe he did because that little exhaust fan was so small. I don't know. I mean, maybe it wasn't even This seems a little more obvious. I mean, you couldn't just fly into the middle of the Death Star until you get to the Return of the Jedi one. But that one was at least in construction. This one's a little different, but I don't know. It's just interesting to me that Palpatine didn't learn the lesson here, but who knows, man? The arrogance of the wicked. I guess that's the point there. Pride comes before fall. What's the proverb say? So
yeah, and he might have been thinking, and if that is some part thinking like, well, does he know how the droid control ship blew up? Does he ever find out? But I guess he knew
maybe
from Anakin, but I was thinking, by the time the Death Star rolls around, Palpatine thinks I have the most important chess piece, on my side now. Like, I have Vader, so no one else can touch it. He's not counting on Luke. I don't think it's so much the weakness of the Death Star that he doesn't pay attention to. It's the power of the Skywalkers, I guess. The fact that that Luke even exists. He doesn't know about that. So I think part of his plan is like, I have the most powerful Force user with me now, so who can stand against me? Who cares if there's a obvious part of the Death Star that can be exploited to blow it up? the Sith have all the power. We got the biggest fleet. The Empire's in power. So maybe it's more of that. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts. But
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. Good question. I don't know. But Anakin, we know blows it up. We do know that. We know Luke does the same thing a couple years later, a couple decades later. I do like the scene here where just Anakin turning on the engine just blows away that droid. It's a nice touch.
yeah, exactly. Yes.
And then clips one in half flying out. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's just cool. I mean,
Yep.
what kid doesn't like that,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Just George having fun here. Yeah. Yeah, let's just have that Anakin cut a droid in half.
Yeah, you can have a lot of fun with limbs and stuff, being beheadings and being chopped in half when they're not real people.
Yeah,
like with Darth Maul, you gotta be careful, but droids, you can limbs, they explode, limbs fall apart. If that was a stormtrooper, that'd be probably too grisly. But yeah, droids allow you to have that kind of fun.
I do love too how the music here, I mean, is the Force theme, right? And it's just triumphant.
Good call, great call.
Amazing Force theme. That's one of my favorite, if not my favorite song in Star Wars, is the Force theme. And I just love it. And it's just so cool here to see oh man, Anakin just zipping in and out. Yeah, this is pod racing, he's having fun.
Well, and as you said, like a huge moment for the Force, right? Like the chosen one is, making his first like big move, big victory in the galaxy. So that's great. A great call. Yeah, there's there's no accident why the Force theme is playing right there.
Yeah, I love it. It just gives you goosebumps every time. So, and Anakin, it's such an Anakin moment. He's having a blast. Well, literally, yeah. But I mean,
yeah.
that was a bad joke. I didn't even intend. But just to see him, just woo, just love it. Just being a kid, having fun, and we'll see Anakin do that all the way through the prequels. He's at his best when he's piloting and destroying things, and he's just in the middle of danger. He loves it. So pretty cool. And is this the first time we see a female pilot in? Well, probably the first and last time, right? In Star Wars?
Technically no, but in the story, yes. So one of the pilots in Return of the Jedi is female, but it was dubbed over with a male voice.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
the A-wing pilot, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, I think so.
Pilot?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Originally, there were supposed to be female pilots in A New Hope with Attack on the Death Star. But the studio was, and this they didn't buy it. I didn't like the idea of women in spaceships, I guess. And they tried in Return of the Jedi. They still didn't go for it. And people didn't really. I can't remember exactly whose idea it was, but Lucas's original idea was to have women in the because they're in. There's Leia, there's Mon Mothma, there's women in the rebellion, but he wanted them in the ships. But I guess for some reason, higher powers prevailed and said no. And so this is the first time we get it was in Phantom Menace. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, because I heard that there was a female in Return of the Jedi that was dubbed over, but
and it's actually
it was
recast too. Like it's actually two different actors, I think. So like they reshot some scenes. I think this is right. Where certain shots it's a female with the actor's voice dubbed in, but then there's other shots it's a different guy. It's actually just a guy. Like when he died, like when he flies into the bridge. It's the guy who flies into the bridge. The Star Destroyer.
Yeah, the A-wing pilot. Yep.
I think it's that. I want to say there's two different actors there, one male and one female. But
okay, yeah, and I think this is the last time we see one too. I don't think we see one in 2 or 3, if I remember right. But
I'm trying to think. I guess. Well, Padme flies her ship in.
Well, that's
if you
true.
count that in episodes 2
that's
and
true.
3 or 3. But
that is.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen much. Or does Leia ever fly anything? No.
I don't know. She helps with the Falcon a little bit, but she's never like.
That's right. Yeah, she's
the pilot, I think, but
she's in the pilot seat, but she doesn't really. Yeah, no, she's not really the one. She's not like doing a barrel roll or anything. I don't know.
Do a barrel roll.
Yeah.
And then we get this really cool explosion. Do you know? Did they blow up a model here?
Yep.
I think they did, if I remember right. Yeah. It's so cool. That just had to be so much fun.
It totally looks like it. It is, and it looks it too, because CG explosion, especially in 1999, wouldn't have looked this good. So yeah.
Oh, it just looks great. I love those explosions. I like that. I don't know. You just feel the closeness of it, where they actually. I don't feel like we've seen it yet in Star Wars, where you see the explosion like in the cockpit, like in the control room, and where the Pneumonians kind of flinch back and cover their heads, and then just, up in flames. I don't know if we've seen that before, have we?
You see in like X-wings, like in the Attack of the Death Star, you see like
Oh,
the
that's true.
Porkins and other. You see like the sparks fly and smoke inside the cockpit, and then they blow up. But not on this scale. Nothing like I guess the Star Destroyer. We saw again like the A-wing pilot kind of flew into the bridge, but it wasn't like a huge sparks and fire in that room. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, they weren't like consumed. You just see them dive down and
yeah,
the windows explode. But yeah. Yeah. I always thought that was kind of a nice touch, even as a kid watching that, and just the sound. I mean, again, the sound is amazing. Ben Burtt is incredible, talented guy doing the sound effects on this, just amazing. So, yeah, what an explosion! You can't help but think of the Death Star either, because the core blows up. Just the ball part of it. Like, there it is. The Death Star explodes. They all fly away. Same kind of shot.
Exactly. It's the rehearsal for the attack on the Death Star in Episode 4. But again, if you're watching this in order, it's so cool how that kind of builds in scale too, right? Because maybe I don't know if people were disappointed by that when they saw this movie, if they'd seen it 4, 5, 6, but because it's a smaller space battle than Return of the Jedi, and even though the biggest space battle in the whole series is in Revenge of the Sith at the beginning, in terms of how many ships and how complicated it is, but I think that my favorite space battle in Star Wars is Episode 4, is the attack on the Death Star. I think, and I think that just the way that scene is structured, the tension that's built to that final moment of the finale of the Death Star exploding is and Luke's success there. I think that's just great. So I think I do like how this how Lucas doesn't necessarily try and go bigger and better with each film. Like each one, there's always a bigger threat, it's always a bigger ship, it's always a bigger explosion, it's always he in this case he focuses on the lightsaber battle, as opposed to make that more of a spectacle than even though this is still cool, but it's it's not as I guess just in terms of scale, like this is still, like we said, it's still intense, it's still awesome, that explosion's still great, but it's just in terms of big, the lightsaber battle in this is much bigger than we've seen before, even though the space battle is slightly smaller. There was that wasn't meant to be the spectacle as much as the lightsaber fight was, but it's still that doesn't mean he didn't pay any attention to it. Like you said, that explosion is fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of how it switches. Like the space battles progress each movie, at least a little bit, like you said, and the lightsabers, yeah, do as well. But trilogy to trilogy, they kind of switch. Yeah, a little bit different focuses, but. I love, man. I mean, just the mood change that happens when they drop down to Naboo. I mean, you feel it in the music, and just, I mean, obviously just the action, because they're all just sitting there with their hands up, like, what do we do? And then the droids all start falling apart. I don't know. It's just kind of a neat, quick transition. Like you just kind of feel the impact of it. I guess huge music, blow up the ship in space, and then we just kind of see the ripple effect almost, where it's kind of like, here's the ripple down on the planet. It's kind of neat.
And I kind of like how the music kind of goes, falls, it kind of winds like as the droids kind of power down.
Yeah.
They're kind of both doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the term for that? There's a term for that. Where the music kind of is the sound effect in a way.
Oh yeah, we talked about it in like when Jar Jar jumps into the water. It's called Mickey Mousing.
There you go. I couldn't remember the name of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's always a nice touch.
Very old school, kind of cartoony comedy kind of thing. Yeah, but in this case, that's not. Yeah, it's more subtle here, but yeah, it still works the same way.
This is just, I mean, Jar Jar, man, he's just great. This is a great kid moment. Like all these menacing droids, they just start. I love the sound effect again. Just Ben Burtt shutting down, and then their heads just start falling off. Just kind of a nice touch, The heads just pop off.
Mm-hmm. And remind me, is this the shot where you see 1138 on the droid's backpack?
Oh, I don't know. Probably. Because you can see the backpack really clearly back up there.
Yeah, it's kind of like weird looking characters, but it's 1138. Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. There it is. Yep. 1138. That's cool. I never noticed that. Which is a callback to George's first movie, right? THX 1138.
Yep, THX 1138. And it was also which was based off of a short film he did. It was like his senior project at USC when he was in college. But yeah, yep. And that shows up in almost every one of his movies in some way, some shape or form. That's also where the name THX came from, for like the digital sound, the little robot guy that flies around and Yeah. It's like to set a standard for like projection in theaters, like make sure the sound quality is always good. I think that's what it was.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As THX certified, it meant that the sound was going to be good
That's
in,
right.
in the theater. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's a little Easter egg I never knew. And when you look at it, it doesn't look obvious. It doesn't look like here's a number.
Yeah, I never caught that until I heard.
It looks more symbol. Yeah, that's cool. Nice touch.
All right, that's it for this episode. Join us in the next one as we continue our series on the Phantom Menace. As always, thanks for listening, and on to the next one.